Hé les amis, gardez bien les mains et les bras à l'intérieur du wagonnet et restez toujours assis.
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your Walt Disney World information station. I am your host, Lou Mangello, and this is show number 731. And together, as we have been for the past 18 years, we're going to celebrate the magic of the Disney parks, including Disneyland Paris, movies, Marvel, Star Wars, and more, here on the podcast, my weekly live video every Wednesday night on Facebook, events, blog, and more. Please be sure to join the community over at wdwradio.com/clubhouse. Subscribe to the podcast, and you can find everything else at wdwradio.com. So I just returned from a few amazing days in Disneyland Paris, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. And so this week, we're going to look at why now is the perfect time to visit. In fact, we're going to share 30 reasons to visit Disneyland Paris, from unique attractions to magical shows, dining, decor, and the countless aspects of Disneyland Paris that not only make this place special, but an absolute must visit. And to prove to you just how much I really want you to go, I'm going to share how you can win a very special, truly magical vacation to Disneyland Paris, including a 4-day, 3-night stay at the 4-star Disney's Hotel New York, the Art of Marvel, 4 tickets for 4 people for 4 days, valid in both of the Disney parks, food vouchers for breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and many more epic surprises. It's easy to enter for a chance to win the trip of a lifetime. Stay tuned. I'll show you exactly how, where, and when you can do that. Then also stay tuned for our Disney Trivia Question of the Week and more updates at the end of the show. And if you like what you hear, please share the show and tell a friend. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the WDW Radio Show. It took me 30 years, but I finally made it to Disneyland Paris, which is convenient since Disneyland Paris is celebrating its 30th anniversary. And I was able to visit for my very first time, very, very briefly, after our WDW Radio Adventures by Disney to Italy with my wife and my son and Becky Mankin from MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. And I was very recently able to spend a few days there with my daughter. And I can only describe my reaction and response. It's like seeing someone that you're attracted to for the very first time. You go wide-eyed and your heart flutters and you become enamored. But it's when you get to know them longer and spend more time with them that you truly fall in love. And that is how I feel about Disneyland Paris. Why? How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. In fact, that's exactly what we're going to do. Because Disneyland Paris is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, until September 30th, we are going to celebrate 30 reasons to visit Disneyland Paris for your first or next time. I will not do this alone, so I want to welcome back Marion Rose Mangello.
Hello. Woohoo.
Staying with ladies first, Becky Mankin from the aforementioned MEI and Mouse Fan Travel.
I have 3 pages of notes, so I'm not sure if 30 is enough for this. That tells you just how much I love this park.
Wow, that may be, in all the years I've known you, this may be the most researched. Look, she's showing the pages. The most research Becky's ever done. And coming in with no less than 4 full bookfuls of notes is Jeremiah Good from laughingplace.com.
Wait, we were supposed to have notes?
You've been there enough, Jeremiah, that I think you probably don't need notes.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to just be there a few weeks ago for the actual 31st anniversary. So it is very fresh in my mind, and I do love this park.
Okay, so in that same order, Marion, Becky, and Jeremiah, I want you to very quickly tell me when your first visit was. Marion, we know yours. And I want you to give me, just off the top of your head, a single one-word description of Disneyland Paris. Go.
So I was obviously just there about a week ago, and I would say my one word would be castle.
Becky?
I'm trying to remember when I think it was 2017 that I was there for the very first time. My word, I'm just thinking about the overall park, and I'm going to say charming.
Jeremiah?
Mine was 2019, again for an anniversary, and to go with the French, très magnifique.
Was that your version of French?
Yes, oui.
I'm not going to even try. And when we have to get to the actual naming, the names of these attractions, I'm going to try not to butcher these. But this is actually, I think this is a great time for us to talk about Disneyland for the first time because it is the 30th anniversary. There's a lot happening there in terms of new attractions, decorations, entertainment, food, costumes, merchandise, shows, a very special show that we'll talk about that happened for the first time ever inside a Disney park. And I thought the way that we would approach this would be sort of doing almost a virtual tour of the park. We're going to start with sort of a wide shot and then go through Disneyland Paris and the studios and the resorts, and then maybe at the end talk about our one or top 3 favorites. And let's sort of look at the resort as a whole first. And just to give you a little bit of a primer and context, Disneyland Paris is located in a suburb of Paris, about 40 or so minutes from the center of city by train, very, very close to the Charles de Gaulle Airport. There are a number of hotels, partner hotels, 2 parks, Disney Village, and the park itself is larger than Disneyland, but smaller than Walt Disney World. And part of the reason why I wanted to start talking about the location, because I think one of the first things that is a reason to visit, and I think makes Disneyland Paris a very easy place to visit, is not just location, but transportation. So they say that getting there is half the fun. And I think in the case of Disneyland Paris, it's also super easy and super convenient, which is why I put transportation not inside the park, but to and from the park, because it's about 20 or so miles east of Paris. And I'm probably this is my first mispronunciation. Is the name of the town called Chessy?
Sure.
Chessy? Okay. And it's interesting too. So nerdy little bit of going back in time for whatever it's worth. Do you remember before Disneyland Paris or Euro Disneyland was a thing, when they were looking to expand overseas, there was a choice that Michael Eisner was making, and it was between France and Spain. And he chose France, specifically this area, because it is so easily accessible from some of the major markets that they were targeting in Western Europe. And Spain really, really wanted this resort because they wanted to get attention and increase tourism. There was the Seville Expo and Barcelona Olympics going on in 1992, the same year of Disneyland Paris opened. But location is such an important part. And Becky, when we came from the ABD and got to France, we stayed actually at the airport. We didn't stay in Disneyland Paris. And you're able to take a train directly from the train station at the airport to the parks. And when I say to the parks, I don't mean outside of Disneyland Paris. I mean, you literally come out right in the middle of Disneyland Paris. It is incredibly accessible. It's very easy. We didn't do this, but I found out you're actually able to pay a small fee, and when you come out, they'll deliver your bags right to the resort. So I love the fact that getting there, even if you don't have a car, is very, very simple.
A lot of people don't realize just how easy that train is from Charles de Gaulle out there as well. And that's one of my favorite tricks. If you're in Europe and you do a stopover in Paris to do a connection to get home, spend the night at the airport like we did. And then you just go downstairs from the hotel that is in the airport. It is an 8-minute train ride. And a lot of people don't realize just how quick that is just to get out there. If you get there early in the morning, you just take the train, go out, spend the day in the parks, and then come back and catch your flight the next day.
Yeah, to jump on that, I've been there 3 times, and each of the 3 times I've done a different mode of transportation. The train is by far the easiest, a little bit more expensive. They do have a bus, kind of like the old Magic Express, but the schedule for that, if you get there early, you're waiting a little while. And then this last trip, I did an Uber, which actually wasn't too expensive. And all 3 were pretty easy. I preferred doing the Uber, actually, so I could actually look at what was around me. And it's very strange living in Florida, growing up in California, to see the difference between all 3 of the landscapes around the park. And Disneyland Paris is the most isolated, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, and when I was there with Marion a week or so ago, we extended our trip for a couple of days and went into Paris. We didn't take a train. We actually did take a car service. And the time that we left, there was a lot of traffic. But Marion, it took probably about an hour to get to the city center of Paris. We were staying right near the Arc de Triomphe. And so it was a pretty easy ride as well.
Yeah, the car that we took from Disneyland to like the center of Paris, not only was it, I mean, there was traffic, of course, because it's Paris, but it was a really beautiful car ride. Dad wouldn't know because he was asleep. But the way that we went, it was along the Seine. You could see everything. And it was a really cool transition, I guess, from the more isolated and the different type of beauty that's in the park to the architecture of Paris, I guess.
The other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of sort of the resort as a whole, and we're talking about the transportation and the ease of getting there and the ease of getting around there too. One of the things I think is a huge plus for this park too, we talked about sort of in context versus Disneyland and Walt Disney World. This is also a very, very easily walkable park in between the 2 parks and the village and the many resorts, right? There's 7 different resorts, and we'll talk more about those later. But especially, Disneyland Hotel is at and in the center of the park. The Disney Hotel New York, the Art of Marvel, the Newport Bay Club, the Sequoia Lodge are just a few minute walk from the entrance to the park, Disney Village, and Walt Disney Studios Park too. And I love that, right? You don't have to worry about buses, monorails, boats, Ubers, taxis, other modes of transportation. It's a very, very easily walkable park too. And I love that quaint size of it. It is it's a very self-contained park.
It's really well designed just for that. So out of the 7 resorts that are there, typically it's about a 10-minute walk if you're at the New York hotel, 15 minutes for a couple of the others. 20-minute walk is the farthest of the Disney resorts that are there, except for obviously the ranch is kind of within 50, is farther out, but they all have shuttles too. So if you can't manage that walk that's between 10 and 15 minutes, or 20 in the case of Cheyenne or Santa Fe, it's about an 8-minute shuttle. So there's that option if you're, not really wanting to walk or your feet really hurt at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's very much for everybody who's been to Walt Disney World and thinks of taking the shuttle from the hotels and how long that can take. I was surprised. I stayed at the Sequoia the first time I went, and that bus, it just crosses the street. You don't realize how close you are, but at the same time, you don't feel like you are right across the street from the parks. It is very separate and very nice. But I did stay at Newport and walked, and it was beautiful, especially in the morning in France. It was just, you think of a little chill in the weather, and you'd get over there, and then you'd have a great day in the park.
Well, and I think that's actually a great segue to what was first on my list when we start talking about the park itself, because that walk into Disneyland Paris, even before you get through the entrance gate, you use the word, and it's the first thing on this sort of next part of my list. One of the reasons to visit Disneyland Paris for me is she is beautiful. It is an absolutely spectacular park. And what made me think of that is, even as you approach that main entrance gate, Marion, we were talking as we came in and out of the park, how beautiful that sort of park-like area is, that main sort of entranceway that is has these meandering paths and flowers and trees and fountains as you approach the Disneyland Hotel. But the park itself, specifically Disneyland Paris, is, Becky, I think you used the word, it's charming, it's elegant, it's romantic, it is colorful, the landscaping is spectacular, and I think each land's aesthetic and theming is bold and it's colorful, and the placemaking of this park is spectacular. And I think the park is meant to be taken sort of slow and savored like a fine croissant on a Parisian sidewalk. Like, it sparks exploration, it sparks discovery, and even that sort of main entranceway under the hotel, Phantom Manor and Frontierland and Discoveryland and the arcades. I think the beauty of the park itself, without even stepping into a building or onto attraction, is a reason in and of itself to visit.
I completely agree that I had that as one of my top things on my list, was the park-like setting and feel. It allowed you to relax. I don't know, the greenery and the flowers, and it really does feel like it's not a theme park. It feels like a park. It feels just that type of thing on a Sunday where you go and stroll through the gardens and go on a ride or two or five. I think it's beautiful. I think it's one of the most beautiful parks of the Disney, theme parks.
I think that the garden outside is particularly special because, unlike at least Disney World, which is the most familiar to me, there's no sort of, like, I'm going to use the word like unpaid, like public, I guess, sort of park setting in Walt Disney World, unless you're staying at a resort or you go into a park. But I think the most unique thing about that garden outside of Disneyland Paris is I could see myself going there to study or do work on a bench in the shade in a gazebo. Like, there's really nothing like that very chill and beautiful park setting anywhere else. And I think that's super unique and super cool. And not only that, it's incredibly convenient. I could definitely see myself leaving that park and, chilling outside and then, taking the walk over to the other park or back to the resort or whatever.
Yeah, you really hit it on the head. There's a gazebo just outside the gardens heading into the Disneyland Paris Hotel that every time I walk by, I just want to sit there for an hour and enjoy and look out into the gardens. And this is something I'll try not to harp on this too much. I'm sure Becky also has the memory of a little before you guys just visited and saw what they're transforming that area into. A few years ago, it wasn't so much the security was built around, and it was a little bit more free flowing and very much more relaxed, but it was also a little dilapidated. When Disney took control of it a few years ago, they've gone in and made it so beautiful. I can remember my first visit, the water was only green. And now, that fountain in front of the hotel, you can just stand there and look at the lights, and you get lost for a few hours.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. And it really helps not only set the stage, but I think the tone for what to expect. It's almost like a coming attraction of what to expect once you get through the gate, because that landscape, that architecture, although it's different themes throughout, and the plants and the flowers and trees are all very different, very appropriate to where you are, it does set the stage for this very there's this sensory overload of just like I said, time and placemaking. To that point, the next thing on my list, and it almost could have been the first thing on my list, and again, I'm going to try and do my very, very best, Le Château de la Belle à Bois Dormant, which I think means Sleeping Beauty Castle, is, don't laugh at me, I'm trying my best. I apologize to everyone who is French or in France. Sleeping Beauty.
Apologize to a whole country.
Or the planet, for that matter.
This castle may be, and we can sort of have this conversation, and Walt Disney World is my home park, and Sleeping Beauty Castle in Disneyland is special, but this castle may be the most beautiful. It is elaborate and delicate. I love how it extends along the right side, and this mix of Gothic with French inspiration. And they, when they were designing it, they talked about how it was inspired by France's own Mont Saint-Michel monastery and Germany's Neuschwanstein. And the fact that these castles exist in this area really challenged them to think very carefully about the design. And that's what Tony Baxter had talked about. But it's beautiful from a distance, and it's remarkable up close. As you start to look at, the 16 turrets. There's 16 turrets because Aurora was 16 when she had her finger pricked by the spinning wheel. Each turret is at a different height. Each turret is unique. Each turret has its own unique weather vane. There's snails climbing up some of the turrets. We'll get inside in a second, but even Marion, we spent a lot of time walking around and through the castle, and I noticed like the trees were pruned into these cubes because that's the way they looked in the Sleeping Beauty film. At night, those turrets are lit. Inside, we'll talk about the attractor or attraction that is in there, but there's an upper level inside that you can walk through that has a gallery dedicated to the story of Sleeping Beauty with tapestries and a spinning wheel and books and stained glass, which is just absolutely incredible. And we could sort of go on and on, but I think that this arguably may be one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful, of all the castles in a Disney park.
I don't think the word arguably is needed. It is the most beautiful. I love this castle. Also, is your new sponsor turrets.com? Because you said turrets like 15 times right there, Lou.
Well, because I can't believe that the more that I look, Jeremiah, at the pictures, because sometimes we're so caught up in the 30,000 foot view that we miss some of the details. And the more I got into the details, I was amazed at the thoughtfulness that went into the design.
Oh no, I can definitely say that, my first trip to Walt Disney World, I took pictures of Cinderella Castle. It was beautiful. My first trip to Disneyland Paris, I spent my first day just looking at the castle. It wasn't until my second day that I even have a first picture, because it is so awe-inspiring. You were talking about the details. As I said, I've been there 3 times now. I've spent multiple days. This last trip, I actually found that there's a hidden passageway in one of the shops downstairs into something that we haven't talked about, and I'll wait till you bring that up. But yeah, the detail is amazing. And the thoughtfulness that Walt Disney World has a giant stage in front of the castle. It distracts from the castle at times. Disneyland Paris, they built the stage on the right-hand side. So you get the full view of this work of art. And Tony Baxter, no matter what, the best thing he ever did was that castle. He put forth to the Imagineers to create a perfect castle, and there is no better castle in the Disney Pantheon.
You just nailed that one by saying work of art, because when you walk up to it, the castle itself is stunning, but the surrounding as well, with that sloping greenery that comes down the side and the trees perfectly manicured around it. It has just this feel that there's nothing else around you for a moment. The way it's set up, you're not seeing park, or attractions behind it or to the sides of it. You're just standing in front of this beautiful castle surrounded by meadow. And it does have that feel of just being a gorgeous piece of artwork.
I feel very passionately about this castle. This is by far my favorite part of the Disneyland Paris trip was the castle. And each day we were there, we went up into the castle 2 separate times each day. And of course, explored the surrounding area. But I think something that really stands out to me about it is, unlike the Walt Disney World one, which of course I still love, this castle tells a story based on multiple parts of it. Inside, the stained glass windows obviously tell the story of Sleeping Beauty, with the tapestries, with the spinning wheel, and of course with the stained glass and the balcony that you can actually stand on the back. The rose gardens and the turrets have engravings of the animals or of the trees, but depending on where you are in the castle, what is on the pillars and the turrets changes. If you're closer to the magical entrance that I guess we're talking about later, there's sort of maleficence symbols like the crow and the dragon. But if you're over on like the rose garden stage side, there's the owls and the birds and the squirrels that you see in Aurora's imagery. And I think one of the coolest parts that we've forgotten to mention is this castle, they shoot fireworks off of multiple levels of it. I'm sure we'll get into the fireworks show later, but that's something that completely caught me off guard. That is such a cool detail. And in conclusion, there's just a lot of layers and levels to it that you're not really able to explore in some of the other ones. Obviously, there's what I'll call the basement level. I didn't get to see that in It's Pure Magic, which we'll dive into. I'm so upset about that. Anyway, but just physically, you're able to explore these levels, but in the storytelling that it gives you, you're also able to explore the layers of Aurora's story, and it sort of carries you through the park. And about the stage, I also feel very passionately about this as somebody that's going into stage technology and stage management. I think that the way that they engineer this is literally perfect. Any view that you have of this castle is magnificent, and the way that the stage is framed on that right-hand side, where it sort of bleeds into the Discovery Land aesthetic, but works so perfectly together with Fantasyland. And it just creates a gorgeous picture. I really wish that we could have seen a stage show on there, because that would have been just so cool. But I'm sure that they can incorporate the water in there as well, which is another part of the castle. There's unlike the ones that we've seen, there's I guess there's a moat around ours too, but this moat seemed special because of the way that it was designed. It was just really beautiful.
And
so, Lou, I have to throw in one more thing about the walkthrough that is by far the best small touch. As you go through the castle, it does tell the story of Sleeping Beauty from her birth to her birth party without Maleficent being invited to the spinning wheel. But when you get over to the part where the 3 fairies put everybody to sleep, they have 2 knights. And if you go up close enough, you can actually hear them snoring. And that is the touch that is not needed, But is that one, like every time I go there, I forget about it and I walk up and I just hear the snoring and I just lose myself.
The details are just amazing.
Yeah. And I think that the castle, depending on where you look at it from, takes on a different shape and a different story. Like looking at it head on from Main Street has a very different look than if you look at it from the Castle Keep inside of Fantasyland versus the Discoveryland side. And these rolling sort of verdant hills on the side with the waterfalls and the water features, it is nothing short of spectacular. And she's very photogenic, depending on when and where you look at it from. Same thing too, like all the other castles, like it's deliberately situated so it faces south, right? So it's not backlit when you're trying to sort of capture photos from the front. So everything is incredibly intentional. Let's go from the outside and sort of the second story of the castle to below the castle. And Marion, I know this is very hard for you. The one thing my daughter wanted to see when she went was the dragon. La Tenière du Dragon, in this dark dungeon where this monstrous prisoner lurks, chained against these jagged rocks, sometimes dozing, sometimes awake. When it was first built in 1982, it was the largest animatronic of its kind in the world. It was spearheaded by Imagineer Terry Hardin, who had been working with Disney since the mid-80s. And to try and give context to the relative size, she's 27 meters, about 89 feet in length, weighing about 2,500 kilograms. But not only is she huge, but she moves, she breathes. The details, the eyes, the wings, the expanding, as she breathes, the scales, the smell, right? There's sort of this dungeony, sort of damp, dark smell in there, the growling and the rumbling. It is an experience. I think the dragon is, if it's not already, it is considered an attraction in and of itself because it is that spectacular. And again, you can enter from the front, from the side, you can enter or exit through the gift shop, and each of these entryways and exit passages give you different views of this beast that appears to be living and breathing.
It was phenomenal to me. When I first saw the dragon, I did like we normally do. I didn't do any research. And by the way, I was wrong. My first trip was in 2013. I wasn't awake. But when I had no idea the dragon was in there, and you just kind of meander down that path and walk in, I think I was in there for an hour and a half watching all of the movement and listening to all the sounds, down to, you remember how her tail kind of wraps around the rocks, and it's barely visible. So they didn't have to go to all of that time and expense to make sure that tail twitches the way it does randomly, but it does. So to me, that just told me that was somebody's baby. That was someone's work of art, that they made sure that it was as realistic as it possibly could be. And when we returned, I was looking just to see if that tail still twitched the way it did, because over the years, we all know animatronics sometimes have an issue or two. But no, everything was just as perfect as it was the first time I saw it. I think that is probably one of the number one reasons to visit Disneyland Paris, is to see that majestic creature.
And it was originally supposed to be a static figure, but Terry was like, no, I can make this a continuous motion audio animatronic, which made it the largest one. And then there was a discussion, a decision, like how, do we have to, there was a talk about having a skeleton of Maleficent down there, right? Sort of paying homage to the Maleficent dragon form that they eventually abandoned, because they were trying to figure out, like, how do we sort of incorporate Maleficent in here, but Maleficent's not there anymore. So they created a backstory about how this dragon was found in an egg by Merlin and put under his magic shop for safekeeping. So I love that there's a connective story to it, but how she had the foresight and the confidence to be able to say, no, I can make this thing, I can bring this thing to life.
Marion, it's not worth it. It's really not that cool. There's no reason to be upset you didn't see it.
Wait, very quickly, Marion. So it was the first thing we were going. Like, we made a beeline there when the lower entrance was closed. I said, "Oh, let's go up. I'm sure we can maybe get in through the gift shop." Marion, Marion runs away from you and has
I can't even describe to you how shattering this was. So we walked to the first entrance. We're like, blocked off. We'll just go to the other one. Like, maybe there's, I don't know, something. Went around to the other one and we walked and we're like, this one's closed too. It's probably just like a day thing. And we walk out of the store and he's like, we'll come back tomorrow. I said, no, we're finding out if it's a day thing right now, right this second. We walk back in and I walk up to this little guy and I'm like, hi, when will the Dragon be open? And he goes, July. I said, like, July, like next month? And he's like, yes. And I said, okay, thank you. And then
Marion's like, does July mean tomorrow in French? Like,
well, the thing is, that was the only thing I wanted to see. I said, that's the first thing I want to do. Went, boom, there. I was like, what's the next thing I want to do? The next day, or not the next day, a few hours later, I wanted to go to the Alice walkthrough. We walk up to the Alice walkthrough and it's closed. I said, hey, when are you guys open again? He goes, July. I said, July? Does July mean tomorrow? And then we went back the next day and July did mean tomorrow for the Alice walkthrough. I don't know what that man was thinking that he said July, but I'm happy that it meant the next day.
So, Lou,
did not happen for the Dragon, though.
I know that you're not very experienced on planning vacations or know anybody that can check.
I know
on
where
these
you're going.
things, but you do know that on the app, it talks about closed attractions, right?
Listen, man.
Booyah!
Okay, the Dragon. Yes, the Dragon is by far one of the most amazing things. I myself has spent many an hour down there. Like I was referencing, I've gone into the magic shop or the whatever the shop is now inside the castle, completely missed the entire backstory that leads down into the upper level until this last trip. And I stood up there for 20 minutes watching the Dragon go through her cycle. I mean, to break the fourth wall, yes, it is an animatronic. Yes, it has like a 3-minute cycle of when it wakes up, it roars, it moves its head, and it wings and tail. But, that isn't like, there is nothing else in any Disney park that I've just sat there and watched so intently and so passionately to just enjoy just basic movements of something that, it's like seeing the dinosaurs at Jurassic Park. We will never see those in person. We only know what they are because of the movies and the theme parks. This Dragon is as close to real life as you can ever get.
And apparently we're going to need to go back to Paris.
I was going to say, clearly we need to...
I'll go.
In July. Clearly, we need to go back in July.
Well, now that we know how easy and accessible it is to get there, we can shoot over very quickly. So, all right, let's move on to, I think this is number 6, number 7. It's sort of...
we can't count.
I know this. The next thing, and this is not in sort of any type of order of walking through the park, but in order of things that for me were reasons to go and visit. And I have 2 words for you, my friend. They are Phantom Manor. Phantom Manor is the Disneyland Paris version of the Haunted Mansion, but it is a very different, to a certain degree, mansion than you're used to in Walt Disney World and Disneyland. I want to be careful. This is a very, very, very deep rabbit hole that we can go into, and I think it almost may deserve its own show at some point because the story of the mansion is very different. The story of how it came to be is different, but it's not a haunted mansion. It's a Phantom Manor, one, to help sort of translate for a non-English speaking audience. But this is a manor that not only looks different from the outside, but has a much darker theme and much darker story. And there's some inspiration from Phantom of the Opera, but it's also one that was modified and expanded to tie it into Frontierland, right? There's no Liberty Square here. There's no New Orleans Square here. This exists in Frontierland. Again, Tony Baxter, brilliant Imagineer, had to take this attraction and modify it for the tastes and preferences of a French and European audience, the Haunted Mansion being among those, and tying it into this Frontierland story and a manner that would be congruent with Thunder Mesa, the fictional town, and everything that would happen around that. But the story is expanded. There's expanded scenes inside. I don't even know where to start, from the gazebo outside with the music box to Vincent Price, whose original recordings as the ghost host weren't used when the park opened, but in 2019, his narration returned with a French accompaniment. Like, you walk in through, it's the only mansion, I think. Yeah, it's the only mansion where you sort of walk through the front door, but it has this wonderfully dark and disturbing backstory of Henry Ravenswood, the owner of the manor, and his daughter Melanie, who, attracted the attention of 4 different suitors who each came to a very mysterious and untimely end. But suffices to say that this mansion is not just dark. It does not just have this additional scene of the western scene of the end, but this mansion, like many other things we'll talk about, is downright kind of scary.
Yeah, so my backstory with the mansion, this was the one thing that I wanted to see all my history with Disneyland Paris. And when I went in 2019, of course, it had been closed, but we were there for a special announcement, a special event, where thankfully the Imagineers took the time to walk us through step by step everything that this ride was going to be a week later for the soft opening. So I didn't get to experience at my first visit. I did, again, walk around the entire manor, take lots of photos. When I did go back, I was blown away. I think, Becky, you, myself, and Lou, we've seen the travel videos. We remember the old days of the Disney Channel where they'd go and show us things. So there were always photos and videos of things that, to me, I knew back then was Phantom Manor, but now that we're so far removed, my mind was almost completely empty of what was happening. And when you go down into the grave and you see the skeletons playing the skeleton head, you see the mayor lifting his head that sure does sound familiar and more so look familiar on the head, saying, "Welcome, foolish mortals." You just never expect anything like that in a Disney park. Everybody's like, alien encounter was so intense. No, this is up there as far as the, hey, you want to get freaked out, you want your kids to have nightmares? Yeah, come and do Phantom Manor. But it is another, like, I will say this just about everything in Disneyland Paris, it's a work of art.
It is dark and twisty and cool. I love Phantom Manor. And to me, this is the best of the best of the best of the Haunted Mansions across the globe. The storytelling is rich. It is visually stunning and creepy. And you want to ride it over and over again, because this is one of those attractions that you will never see all of the detail even after you've ridden it 50 times. I think the first time I was there, we rode it about 3 times, and I learned or saw something new every single corner. And some of it is familiar, yet it's unfamiliar. And I remember seeing it for the first time and looking at it and going, tumbleweeds? It just didn't match to anything that I understood the Haunted Mansion to be. until you get in there and really kind of soak in the story and the dark and twistiness. I love this attraction and is one of the highlights of the entire Disneyland Paris park.
I would say I would describe this ride as like the cool, edgy, older cousin of the Haunted Mansion, that like the Haunted Mansion is like, oh, one day I'll be as scary and cool as the Phantom Manor. Like it has that kind of, it wants to cross that line of like, kind of like horror, like scary. I mean, in order to really understand the depth of the story, you have to do a little bit of research, I think. So I did that after like our second ride. And that made me appreciate some of the details so much more because it really is an interesting story. And there are some moments that I got freaked out. I got creepy. The animatronics lunges at you, like wants to like grab you out of the little buggy. I got scared. But there are like plenty of really cool details and interesting changes in the scenes, obviously, because it's a completely different story than what I'm used to. But it still maintains the same structure, I guess, like story structure of the rooms that you visit. So it's a cool way. It's a twist on what we already know, just to make it more interesting, more fun for the people, I guess, that have been to the other mansions. I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, even from, when you approach this mansion, you're going to see it looks very, very different than what you see, than these very sort of royal, regal, estate type homes, which actually was a cause of controversy. Imagine your legend, imagine your Mark Davis, very much disliked and did not approve of the sort of derelict aesthetic of the building, saying Walt would never approve of this, right? It's why the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland did not look like an old, rundown, abandoned home, but something that was currently inhabited. Here, they felt that they would be the French and European audience would almost be confused if it had this sort of completely updated appearance like the American mansions did. Even the music is very haunting. There's an orchestration by John Debney that takes Grim Grinning Ghosts and makes it much darker and more romantic, and then gets a little bit more upbeat in that final Phantom Canyon scene. But it's a beautiful, wonderful, detail-oriented attraction. But you're right. It is, the word to sort of use is scary. Not in a way that's, it's incredibly frightening, but you know what? I actually had scary. Go ahead. I had scary on my list. I actually had scary on my list as a reason to visit Disneyland Paris. And I'll connect the dots here, because when I say scary, I don't mean in a you should be scared off kind of way, but there are sort of aspects of this park that are mature. And what I mean by that is there is a horror element to Phantom Manor, right? It is this classic ghost story that is just dark enough and daring, I think really daring enough to really be appreciated by older guests. And I think that there's other attractions in Disneyland Paris that have that too, and maybe ones that you would not necessarily expect. And I don't mean this as a way to scare off, but Marion, even when we rode things like Snow White's Scary Adventures, right? It's still scary here, right? It used to be Snow White Adventures in Walt Disney World because they took the word scary out. This ride has scary elements to it. Pinocchio's Daring Journey is very, you get into Pinocchio's Daring Journey, you get into the scary parts of that movie. Like, you go right into... They skip
the whole beginning.
The whole becoming a boy, right?
The Donkey Land. It is... I was like, where is the blue fairy? And then at the end, she's there. But they want the children to have a little bit of a nightmare, and then they'll come back for more. But I was creeped out by that one and by the Snow White one. That was like another like just creepier version. I felt like there was one more. Maybe I'm forgetting something.
Well, I mean, I think those two are important to mention because they exist in Fantasyland, right? And the thing that was somewhat unsettling about Pinocchio was it does skip sort of the warm and heartfelt fuzzy, like the old man who just wants to have, and he makes his little boy. You go right into the donkeys and the cage and the whale, and it's macabre, right? There's very macabre elements, yeah.
That's a great word. And the thing I was interjecting before was it's not quite as scary as, say, Hong Kong at Halloween.
That's a whole separate.
But it does take, across the park, when it comes to these things, it does take a little bit more of a macabre approach to the storytelling than we see in the US. And I frankly appreciate that and adore it, but I will be quite honest with you. The moment that I got into the donkeys and the cages when we first went in, I'm like, oh, I'm out. If I could have gotten out, I would have. That's not a way to start a story for me, but yeah, macabre is a great word.
So one of the things about Snow White and Pinocchio, they are actually direct lifts from the 83 Fantasyland and Disneyland, because Tony he always felt that those, because that was one of his first major projects, was the 83 Fantasyland. And they are perfect storytelling and really perfect dark rides. I mean, a dark ride was always meant to be a little bit scary and a little, it's kind of like makes you jump and makes you hold the person you're next to. So they do a great job with that. But I agree, especially Frontierland is so, the entire story that travels through it, that is Big Thunder, is the horseshoes, is all the shops. They do a great job of placemaking. And this was done well before Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge, or Avatar. This is an entire land that if you pay attention to the story and you notice, like, I can almost guarantee that you didn't go up into the stockade, Lou, and explore that, because they don't have a Tom Sawyer Island. The entrance of Frontierland is a whole exploration area, and they have the bits and pieces of the story that set up the grander story of Frontierland that is really the payoff of Phantom Manor. And, one of the things about the scariness is I've always felt that outside of America, the storytelling, they always try to focus more on a broader range of, hey, we're not just going to scare our kids with Freddy or Jason. We're going to tell the story that intrigues them. And I think that's what Phantom Manor does the most, is it intrigues people to learn the story and go deeper into it.
Yeah, and even at Manor we didn't get a chance to ride it, but even Twilight Zone Tower of Terror was reimagined to become a new dimension of chills with new drop sequences and effects and storylines that expanded on the original one. I know.
I didn't know that when you said it's like, we're tired. Da, da, da. I was like, if it's really good, we should go. You didn't tell me there was new things.
It's amazing how this is my fault.
Because it's probably different.
Wow.
It is your fault. You're the Disney guy, huh? The Disney guy should know. Tell me we should go on it.
So I'm going to jump into this because I've done this. And
Dad, I want to go shopping. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever.
The Tower of Terror at Walt Disney Studios Park was built exactly as the one at Disney California Adventure was. It is the lesser version of the amazing, probably one of the best Disney attractions in the world, Tower of Terror at Disney's Hollywood Studios. But what they did, because it was the lesser attraction, they took each of the three shafts and made a different story that revolves around the little girl. And the little girl is warning you not to go on the ride. And there's, in true Twilight Zone fashion, something that is causing problems with the elevator that you don't know. And the first time I wrote it, I'd heard, there's a change to it. Yeah, sure, it's whatever. And I, unlike Lou, made time to make sure I could do it at least once, even waiting an hour for it. And I wanted to get right back on and do it again. This past time I did it 3 times. Sadly, each of the 3 times I got the exact same drop shaft, so I had the same. But having the girl appear and she's like, "Don't go in there. I warned you." And then there are sounds and the drop sequences, and it's not just the basic, "Oh, look, here's the mirror," and then everybody disappears. She appears, gives you this creepy message. It takes, if they hadn't changed Tower in Disney California Adventure to Guardians and they did this update, people would have lost their minds that they were closing this attraction.
Well, now, Marion.
That sounds really awesome, doesn't it? That just sounds so fun.
Don't be ungrateful. Maybe when we go back,
I love this
maybe when we go back next year, we have something to look forward to.
We're definitely going on it next year.
I have an idea about that. We'll talk about that later.
All right, let's move on because we have a lot of things that we have to cover. One of the other things that I loved about Disneyland Paris were the Main Street USA shopping arcades. And I appreciated them even more once we went to Paris proper, because when you see some of these shopping arcades located throughout the city, you understand the inspiration for these 19th century sort of glass ceiling passageways that and these Parisian arcades that house shop. And these are located on either side of Main Street. They're beautiful to walk through. They house little shops and separate entrances to the Main Street shops, but each one tells a different story, right? There's the Liberty Arcade, A Walk to Liberty, which has these beautiful gas lanterns and tells the story of the Statue of Liberty with photos and illustrations and artwork and some great shots of the construction. Some of the wrought iron work in there is beautiful. And then the other one is the Discovery Arcade, walk through yesterday's visions of tomorrow. And it's an homage to, and it sort of connects, I think, directly to Discoveryland, some of the imaginative ideas and inventions and thoughts of what the future would be, from different patents to this visions of what this future utopian world would look like, with display cases and posters. And again, that wooden and green ironwork in there is spectacular. But I love having not just these covered sort of walkways or passageways or throughways, but that each one tells a story and is so deliberately and intentionally designed to each tell a different story as well.
So, Lou, you talked with such passion about this. Did you happen to walk behind the wall to see the little display?
I did.
I spent too much time sitting there just immersed in these French immigrants coming to America, looking up at the Statue of Liberty on the 4th of July or whatever it is. With
so explain what it is, because even Becky's like, I don't remember seeing it.
Becky.
It also could have, this also, Jeremiah, could fall into the scary conversation too.
Yes. Yes, I took my friend in there and he felt the same way. So as you're walking down, they're telling the story of the Statue of Liberty. And there's this little, think of like the Main Street Cinema in Disneyland, how there are curtains and there's the ticket taker and you have to walk around to go in. As you come around either side, there's just a little diorama with 4 or 5 mannequins, but they're all dressed, and very low, they are playing French conversation with the fireworks sounds. And in the distance is the Statue of Liberty, and you see the clouds kind of floating past, and the fireworks are going off above Lady Liberty. And there is no reason for it in the world. They were actually they announced just before COVID that they were going to remove that and place the barber shop in that area. Thankfully, they have not done that. I don't know if that plan is still going forward, but it is just a little hidden gem of the park. And I spent my first visit probably a half hour in there just trying to video it for no other reason than I wanted it on YouTube so I could always reference it. And it is just a thing. Like, there's no reason for it to be there, but it is amazing.
You spent 30 minutes. We spent less than 30 seconds. Mary walked in. She's like, oh, no.
Yeah.
This is
That's what my friend did also. Is like, what is this?
It's
like,
incredibly, dark almost to the point that it's very difficult to see the figures that are in there. We had no context because it was all in French. As opposed to a lot of the other attractions where you might hear a conversation between two people. One side is in French, one side is in English, which helps, no matter what language you speak, be able to understand the context and conversation. But yeah, it's very, very hidden. And Becky, that's why it's very easy to walk right by it, but you should, at least peek in to see.
Okay, we'll add it to the list. If it's still there.
Moving on to next on my list, we talked about the design, the aesthetic, the beauty of this park and landscaping and the gardens and the topiaries, but the lands themselves are spectacular. And a reason to visit Disneyland Paris is Adventureland. The layout, the attractions, the theming, the shopping, the dining, you literally travel to the four corners of the globe, because this Adventureland is different than ones you'll see, certainly like Caribbean Plaza in Walt Disney World, because there are other influences, and it really sort of is broken down into different themed areas. There's the Adventureland Bazaar, which is a recreation of like a city from 1001 Arabian Nights. You can sort of very much connect it easily, and they do, to Agrabah from Aladdin. The second area has more African influence and has a lot of shops and restaurants, like there's a restaurant called the Hakuna Matata restaurant. The third represents the mysterious jungles of Asia and exploration. It features the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Peril, which was unique in a Disney park when it opened in 93. And then last and the largest part is this Caribbean area, which really covers most of the surface area of Adventureland and features, not just Pirates of the Caribbean, but Adventure Isle and, the Captain Hook pirate ship. I think Adventureland is a visually stunning. I talk about an area that is meant to be explored. That is exactly what this land was designed for.
Yeah, there is so much to explore in this land. I've talked to people that didn't even know of the Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Peril attraction because it is so far back. I mean, it was something that was added because they needed something more. And for those of you who don't know, in 1993, the Euro Disney park was considered a failure by Disney, and they needed to try to draw people in. So what they did was essentially go to, I don't remember which creator it was, and bought an off-the-shelf roller coaster and put in a very weak theme, if any theme in it all, for the Indiana Jones. And it's a small 4-person car, has a very tight loop, but it's a fun coaster. And for a long time, they actually ran it backwards because it's one of those coasters, but sadly, it's now just one way, not both. But I found myself getting lost in the caves this time because I actually spent time to explore them. And you think of Tom Sawyer Island, since they don't have, Tom Sawyer is a very American literature piece. This is Pirates, Haunted Man, or Pirates, Peter Pan, Swiss Family Robinson. It is all combined into this area. And the cave work, if that was even a thought of being built today, it couldn't happen. There's so many layers and levels to this. And there are times where you're climbing 30 steps to get up to the top to cross a rope bridge. And you get up there and you have the most amazing view, but there's nobody around because nobody else will climb those steps to go up to the rope bridge.
Yeah, we also kind of just stumbled upon it, and there's really only like there's a little signage saying like Davy Jones' locker is this way and Skull Rock is that way. And it was kind of an interesting, it felt very whimsical, and you felt a sense of wonder, I guess, as you were trying to, it was like a scavenger hunt in a way, trying to make sure you went down every path, because everything, it's almost like a maze. You can loop on it and you can take do I go right or left, and then it brings you back to the same place. So it was very cool, especially as like a first timer experiencing that, because I imagine going multiple times, I'm sure you can get familiar with it, but it was really fun kind of getting to explore it for the first time and actually experiencing that kind of like maze confusion, disorienting feeling of getting to go through it. And then the reward being the really cool views that you get of the brand new pirate ship that was unfortunately closed when we went, but the cool like new pirate ship, and then there's like an abandoned pirate ship. Really, really interesting.
It felt like a different version of Tom Sawyer Island in a way in that area, because it's all discovery. You can spend an hour just exploring and discovering, and hey, should I go right now and see where that takes me? Go left, and where's that going to take me? Visually, it's very cool. It feels spread out even though it's very compact. I love the design of the entire space of this land and all the variety between the attractions that are there to the food options, which are interesting as well.
Well, and Adventureland, which like you said, it sits on an island. If you look down at sort of the map, it sits on an island that's connected by 4 bridges. But Adventureland, because of the walkthrough and because of these different experiences, Adventureland is almost an attraction in and of itself. And Adventure Isle, I think is it's a treasure that's hiding in plain sight, right? You almost there's no sort of entrance or exit to it. You just sort of experience it. It just sort of happens. And each one of the 4 bridges takes you to a different area. They're all in French. I can't try and read them, but you go to this, this sea of swashbucklers, and then there's the Robinsons treehouse, and then there's the shipwreck and the suspension bridge and Ben Gunn's cave and Skull Rock and the pirate ship.
Essentially, it's Captain Hook's pirate ship. And don't worry, Marion, it's been closed every time I've gone also. I don't know if it's actually open anymore, but yeah, it is just a full size. I don't know if it's full size, but it is a very large pirate's galleon that is based off of the Chicken in the Sea. Sadly, that was destroyed when they closed Fantasyland back in '82. But this is, again, Tony going, hey, I destroyed one pirate ship. I'm going to build a bigger version for people to explore. And I've never gotten a chance to play on that, but it is that Peter Pan, Captain Hook type ship. Again, Chicken of the Sea, everything there. You could tell that the Imagineer, Tony Baxter, who created this park, had the love of everything that is Disney. He grew up in the park, so he knew what people would enjoy and went with it tenfold. Sadly, I'm sure we'll talk about the downfall on another podcast of it, but yeah.
Well, and this, again, this is helping to connect the dots between something else that was very high on my list, right? We just talked about Adventure Island. We talked about the Lair of the Dragon. I love, and I think some of my favorite parts of Disneyland Paris are the walkthrough attractions. Each of the lands has at least one walkthrough, right? You have the Dragon's Lair, you have Adventure Isle. In Frontierland, you have Fort Comstock, this sort of legends of the Wild West, talking about some of these far west legends from the Gold Rush to Buffalo Bill, allowing people to sort of wander through and sort of create their own adventure. I read that at one point, kids used to have their own special path that they could go through the Native American encampment outside of Fort Comstock, taking a look at some of the teepees, which I think you can see across the water in Adventureland. Alice's Curious Labyrinth, which I had as a separate entry, but we can talk about here. We mentioned Adventure Island. Aladdin in Adventureland, Aladdin's Enchanted Passage was this walkthrough of scenes and vignettes from the film with beautiful, very colorful dioramas and the music in the background. And unfortunately, it's been closed every time I've been. The Mysteries of the Nautilus, inspired by 20,000 Leagues Under the... I know. I can't wait to go back to be able to go through and see the different chambers and the navigation room and the organ. But I love this idea, guys, of doing these walkthrough attractions. Becky, you sort of mentioned some of the ones that we've done in the past at places like Hong Kong. They really lean into it heavily in Disneyland Paris with, 5 or 6 different ones. And I like this idea of not just having a passive experience, but the sense of discovery, the sense of not knowing what's around the next corner and being able to sort of make a decision that will affect how your experience goes.
I love the Aladdin walkthrough. That had been closed the other times I'd gone, and this was the chance that I got to go through and explore. Sadly, in my head, I was always in my work mode. So I went through and videoed everything. And then I got out and went, I didn't enjoy that as much as I should have. But it's almost like they took the windows of Main Street that they used to do when the new films came out and just expanded it. So you get the full story of Aladdin. The Nautilus walkthrough that was my number one thing. I love Phantom Manor, everything else, but 20,000 Leagues is probably one of my biggest gateways into Disney. And that walkthrough, I spent so many times going through it, just running out, running back in like it was an e-ticket attraction. And I know that they are in the process of updating the technology, putting in new effects. So when we all end up going next year, it should be open.
Good, because I haven't seen that yet. That's my dragon for Marion. Every time I've been there, it's always been closed and not able to walk through. I have noticed that if you go in the fall, a lot of the times you run into that case scenario, but it's always been intriguing to look at from the outside, wondering just what it contains. So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
My personal favorite walkthrough, because obviously the Dragon was closed, was the Alice in Wonderland one. I am a huge Alice in Wonderland fan. I absolutely love that story, and I love the animation and the characters. And the first day, again, it was closed, but then the next day was July, so it was open, and it was so much bigger than I expected. And I like Fantasyland has always been my favorite land, and I loved how whimsical that was and how you sort of were able to walk through the movie like you were a part of it. Obviously Disney's immersiveness and their attention to detail is so special, and through the walkthrough you're able to appreciate those little details more rather than being on a vehicle that your mind can't keep up with. I guess I love the self-paced aspect of it, and it seems much more relaxed and much more like choose your own adventure. Obviously it's a maze as well, so it had like Adventure Isle, it had that very discovery aspect to it, which was very cool. And you get a very unique view of the park from the top of the Disneyland Paris is full, I guess, of unique views, because there's isn't it the Queen of Hearts castle or the King of Hearts castle there that you can go to the top of? Super cool. You can see Sleeping Beauty's castle from a different angle and perspective, which I really loved.
Well, and what
I'm guessing. Sorry. I'm guessing, as you said, Marion, that you could walk through on your own pace. I'm guessing it wasn't a busy day, because on the days that I've gone, I love the Curious Labyrinth. It is by far the the most unique thing about all of Disneyland Paris, even though they have some of the most amazing attractions, because you do get a stroll and look at the gardens. But every time I've gone, it has been the caucus race with kids pushing me through the entire thing. But yeah, it is. I really hope, and this is something that Disney is going through and reinvesting and reimagineering and updating everything. In the couple of times that I visited, I've seen the beauty of that with the pop-up animatron or pop-up figures to now where I would stand there and look at something and I'd be like, I could see the top of the Queen of Hearts head, but she wasn't doing anything. And then you would turn the corner and all of a sudden she just pop up randomly, which it's supposed to do, but things weren't working the best. But yeah, the view from up there, the pure joy, especially if you love the Disney Alice story, you get everything out of it that you could hope.
That is one of those places that I just adore walking through. It's a total attraction in itself. And unlike having to stand in line and queue to get on an attraction, the entire thing from the moment you walk in is just fun. It's playful. It's joyful. It's, again, getting lost in something familiar. Absolutely one of those things that I know a lot of people, especially those who are thrill seekers, would just kind of walk past it and go, don't even bother with that or take the time. I'm telling you, take the time because it is that fun. It inspires joy. And there's a lot of giggles in there. It really is.
I think it's important to mention also, there's an Alice in Wonderland kind of section nestled in Fantasyland. Obviously, the walkthrough takes up a good amount of real estate, but the Cheshire Cat, I wouldn't call it a topiary. I don't know what I would call it. It's like a flat topiary. What's that called?
A floral design, right? A floral
design. Flat topiary. I like that better. It takes up obviously a lot of real estate, but there's also isn't it called the Mad Hare, the little ice cream place with like the themed sitting area, and it kind of spits you out near the teacup. So if you're an Alice in Wonderland fan like me, you kind of are in like a little tiny Alice in Wonderland. Which I really loved. And the music also is just so jovial and happy. So
yeah, it doesn't spit you out into a gift shop. It spits you out to the March Hare refreshments, which we went to, Marion, and had some of those snacks.
We created a DIY affogato. You guys should try it. You get the ice cream and you get a shot, and then you get your sweet and your caffeine at once. Secret menu. It was,
to be clear, this is when we were hitting a wall of exhaustion. And we're like, all right, we need sugar and we need caffeine. And they sold espresso shots where you can get, again, the snack carts and places are different in terms of what they serve. So Mary made her own affogato. But yeah, I loved these lush green hedges and how, you realize that there's a story being told here, right? It's basically it's built in sort of two sections, right? The first part is Alice's adventures prior to meeting the Queen of Hearts. And then the second part is based on her encounter with the Queen, who obviously had a labyrinth similar to this in the film. But you realize that there's like 10 different scenes and like 20 characters and statues and like, I think there's like a dozen fountains and 8 dead ends. So it's not as simple as it might seem. Like and you have a goal. Your goal is to reach the Queen of Hearts castle, where you get this view of Fantasyland. And like you said, Marion, the route itself is similar in shape to the body of the Cheshire Cat. The music is in there. Those familiar scenes like the Blue Caterpillar's mushroom lair and the caucus race. And what I found out, which I didn't realize, there actually used to be a slide at the tower. So you can climb up this tower. There used to be a slide for kids on the way down that was eventually shut down. But one of you said this, and I think you're right. I think this is an attraction that many people might think is for kids. It's not for them. And it's very easily overlooked and shouldn't be. that concludes part 1 of our virtual visit to and the reasons why you should go for your first or next time to Disneyland Paris. There is a lot to cover. There's a lot to love there. And in fact, I want to help you do just that. I actually want to help you get to Disneyland Paris, because in case you can't tell, I was and am so excited about it and truly in love with Disneyland Paris. And more importantly, I really want you to be able to visit, experience, and understand why we adore it so much. And in addition to sharing the reasons why we love it this and next week, and on social, be sure to check my Instagram stories and posts for more pictures and videos, I really want to help you get there. And it's not just with the why and the how and the reasons why to go. I mean, really help you get there. And so do the folks at Disneyland Paris. And thanks to them, that's exactly what we're going to do. Because I, with the help of Disneyland Paris, we're giving you a chance to win a truly magical family vacation in Disneyland Paris, this spectacular and special resort that is deeply rooted in French culture with exclusive experiences that can only be found there. And one lucky winner is going to live out an unforgettable stay for a family of 4, including a 4-day, 3-night stay in the 4-star Disney's Hotel New York, the Art of Marvel. It's where I stayed. I love it. 4 tickets for 4 days, valid in the 2 Disney parks, food vouchers for breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, and some more epic surprises. There's full details, terms, and conditions. If you go to wdwradio.com/DLP contest, you can read more about that there. Now, how do you enter? It's easy. Really. There's no complicated trivia questions, nothing to buy. All you need to do to enter is visit my Instagram, instagram.com/Lou Mongello. There you're going to find a photo post about the contest. The instructions are laid out in the description, but all you really need to do to enter is like the photo, subscribe to the podcast, which hopefully you already are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, join the community, that's the Clubhouse over on Facebook, subscribe to the free WDW Radio newsletter, I'll give you a link to that there as well, follow me and Disneyland Paris on Instagram, and then just answer in the comments what part of or attraction in Disneyland Paris would you love to experience most during the Disneyland Paris 30th anniversary, and then just tag somebody that you'd love to take with you to Disneyland Paris in the comments. You can enter more than once, but you have to tag a different friend or family member in each comment, no celebrities or fake accounts. So the more you enter, the better your chances of winning this incredible trip are. The contest is going to run until Sunday, June 25th at 5 p.m. Eastern. I'll then draw the winner and then announce it on the podcast and on my Instagram. I am so excited for you, and huge thanks again to Disneyland Paris for providing such an incredible gift. And don't forget that whether you win or not, you should still go and visit Disneyland Paris. And if you want to get a free, no obligation quote and some guidance from our friends over at Mousefan Travel, you can visit mousefantravel.com. But again, check out my Instagram at Lou Mongello for a chance to win this incredible vacation prize package. So good luck, or should I say, bonne chance. It's time for our Walt Disney World Trivia Question of the Week, where I invite you to test your knowledge of Walt Disney World's history, or see how well you pay attention to the details in which you see, hear, or remember. And if you think you know the answer, you can enter for a chance to win a Disney prize package. This week's trivia contest is once again brought to you by you. Seriously. Because as part of the WDW Radio Nation, you help bring every episode of the show to life, every live broadcast, the contests and giveaways. They're all thanks to you. And you can find out how you can help the show for as little as $1 per month and get exclusive rewards every month, like scavenger hunts, trivia quests, participate in our group video calls, get access to our private Facebook group, there's shirts, stickers, monthly care packages, and much more. I appreciate you. and the friendship and the love and the support you give me, and I love being able to give back to you each month. And don't forget that a portion of your, obviously optional contribution goes to our Dream Team project to benefit the Make-A-Wish Foundation of America. Thanks to you, we've raised more than $550,000 for Make-A-Wish, and you have really made magic and changed the lives of so many people in a meaningful, positive, and profound way. I'd love to thank some new and longtime members of our nation family, including Andrew Prince, Brian Kirshner, Christine Thomas, Angela Batista, and Faye Edmondson. If you want to find out how you can help the show and be part of the nation family, you can visit wdwradio.com/support. Now, before we get to this week's question, we're going to go back, review last week's, and select our winner. So last week, I asked you to tell me, in Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress, what is the name of the dog? It was clear. What is the current name of the dog? Because it has changed many times over the years. First things first, thanks to all of you who entered, got this one correct, and knew that the answer is Rover. Now, the dog's name has changed many times. It's been Buster, Sport, Queenie, and currently Rover. And actually, at one time in Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World, because remember, this was moved from Disneyland, the dog's name was different in every scene, but now it's Rover consistently throughout the entire show. Anyway, last week, you were playing for a prize package that includes a WDW Radio mug, one of those fancy new pins, and a mystery prize. And last week's winner, randomly selected, is Dominic Altobello. So Dominic, congratulations. I'll get your prize package out to you right away. If you played last week and didn't win, that's okay, because here's your next chance to enter in this week's Walt Disney World Trivia Challenge. So we're talking about Disneyland Paris. We're going to go to Disneyland Paris because when Disneyland Paris opened its doors for the very first time at 9:01 a.m. on April 12th, 1992, 5 years after signing the original agreement, it wasn't actually known as Disneyland Paris. So your question this week is to tell me, what was the original name of Disneyland Paris? You have until Sunday, June 18th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern to go to WDWRadio.com, click on this week's podcast, use the form there. And this week, you're going to play for a WDW Radio mug, a pin, and a mystery prize from Disneyland Paris. So good luck and have fun. That's all the time we have for this week's show. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in this and every week. I hope you enjoyed the first part of our look at all the reasons to go to Disneyland Paris, and of course, our special Disneyland Paris vacation giveaway. I'd love to know from you, have you ever been to Disneyland Paris? Or should I say, have you been yet? If you have, what's your favorite aspect of the park? I'll post this question over in the WDW Radio Clubhouse on Facebook. You can answer there in the comments, or better yet, call the voicemail at 407-900-9391. That's 407-900-WDW1. Tell me your favorite part of Disneyland Paris, or if Disneyland Paris is on your radar, I'll play it on the air. You can also connect with me on social. I am at Lou Mongello on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And you can email me, lou@wdwradio.com, if you have a question you'd like me to answer on the show. Be sure and check out our events page at wdwradio.com/events. Stay tuned for details about our next meet of the month in Walt Disney World, as well as other events on land, at sea, and a few special things we're working on. Stay tuned. Also, please check out the all-new LouMongello.com. In addition to everything I do in the Disney space, I'm also a keynote speaker, coach, and I host a number of events for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs who are looking to build their business and brand through one-on-one coaching. I have weekly mastermind groups and events, including my Momentum Weekend Workshop in Walt Disney World this fall. We are back for our 7th year, and what I think is shaping up to be our best event ever. It is limited to just 50 entrepreneurs with a 10-person Mastermind Monday, and you learn practical and tactical lessons and strategies in interactive workshops. You do the work in the room. You also find out how to apply these to your business and your life. It is built on inspiration, education, impact, and community. You can learn more and secure your seat at loumongello.com/momentum. While you're on the site, you can also find out how I can come to maybe speak to your conference, your event, your business, or school. I specialize in helping organizations leverage customer service lessons and strategies from Disney, and I bring some unique and impactful Disney magic to events and companies and schools through in-person and online presentations as well. And don't forget, when you're going to visit Disneyland Paris or any of the Disney parks around the world, visit our friends over at mousefantravel.com for all your vacation planning needs that all come at no cost to you, but with an exceptional level of personal service. You can visit them over at mousefantravel.com. And as always, my friend, and you are my friend, whether we have met yet or not, all I ask is that if you like the show, and I hope that you do, to please help spread the word. Tell a friend, post a link to this or your favorite episode on social. Better yet, screenshot that you're listening to this episode on your phone, share it on social, tag me at Lou Mongello, and I will reshare it and follow you back. And if you can, take just a couple of seconds to rate and review the show over an Apple Podcast or Spotify. I want to thank some recent reviewers like Joseph Ivan Victor, who says he's the #1 fan of the world. Hey, Lou Mongello, I'm just a fan, and for a long time, started on the old audio guide to Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom audio tours, and it led me here, and I have one episode topic request. Can you talk about the lost history of Roger Rabbit and the future of the film and how it didn't end up coming to Disney's Hollywood studios? Joseph Ivan, I've got good news for you, because if you go to wdwradio.com/Roger Rabbit, you can go and listen to show number 6, where I did a DSI of Roger Rabbit, show number 327, where we talked specifically about Roger Rabbit in Walt Disney World, what is, what was, and what might have been, and show 361, we talk about 25 things we love, miss, or remember about the Disney MGM studios, and there's a lot of talk about Roger Rabbit, what was there, what almost was there, and what could have been there as well. Again, go to wdwradio.com/Roger Rabbit. And again, if you leave your review on Apple Podcasts, I will read it here on the show. Finally, most importantly, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. Always remember to choose the good, to find the good in people and opportunities. And remember that with every action, you have the power to create this ripple effect of positivity. Be the positive light. Be the positive change that you want to see in this world. Set an example for others. Choose the good and have an amazing week. I love you. I appreciate you. So until next time, and or this Wednesday's live show on Facebook every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, wdwradiolive.com. So until next time, see ya.
Hey, Lou, it's Christine Larson out in Flowertown, Pennsylvania, just a little bit north of Orlando. I'm calling in because I'm finally just finishing the top 10 pizzas in Disney World. And there is one that I enjoyed as a gluten-free eater that you guys didn't talk about. I don't think he talked about this location at all, but they seem to have a couple different flatbreads, but when I did order it, it came out like it was a full pizza. It was not a flatbread. So I don't know if they were just substituting, but they at Mama Melrose in Hollywood Studios, the Carne d'Italia flatbread, you can get it gluten-free, and it's got pepperoni, sausage, pancetta, 4-cheese blend, and a spicy marinara sauce. I really enjoyed it, and I actually took my leftovers around the park with me and then kind of finished it off cold. You know, cold pizza's just as good when I was getting hungry later. So, and it's on the appetizer menu, the allergy-friendly appetizer menu. Again, you could do it as a meal. It was huge, but it was yummy. And then they also have a margarita flatbread, which I didn't have, but you can also get that gluten-free as well. So, yeah, there you go. Mama Melrose at the studios. Everybody make someone smile. Have a wonderful day, and I'm hoping to make it to WDW Radio Live this Wednesday night. I have just been overwhelmingly busy, and I keep missing it. So I miss seeing all of you guys. And I'll try and tune in. Have a great week. Make someone smile. Bye.
Hi, everybody. It's Elizabeth from Massachusetts. It's been a while. Oh, my gosh. Life has been absolutely crazy, to say the least. But the school year for me is coming to an end. The site is near of summer, which is amazing. I have a lot of trips planned. One heading down to Walt Disney World at the end of August with my whole family, which is exciting. So it's going to be a busy summer filled with weddings and travel, but I'm so excited. Just finished listening and catching myself up with a few episodes. I would do a lot right now to go to Nomad Couch and relax and look at the water and just sit there after a long day in Animal Kingdom after hearing your review. And it's always fun to hear an armchair or Imagineer armchair, whatever episode. And I love the hotel one. So tons of fun. Thanks so much. Is doing well out there. Hope everyone that it is in Canada right now is staying safe with all these crazy fires. And yeah, just be good, do good, make magic, and talk to you real soon. Bye, guys.
Hello, it's Patrice Roberti from Metro Boston. I hope that you got a nice laugh from that bit about the Phoenicians, because God knows I have. You are an extremely positive person, and you always do look for the good and choose the good, and that you got in that Donnie book with Tim Foster about the Phoenicians. It's just so perfect and so against character. So I hope that gave you a laugh, and as I always say, I'm honored that you would use one of those, something for me on your show. Very honored indeed. So thank you, and we look forward, my husband and I look forward to the day we meet you, hopefully in Florida, maybe at a meet next winter. We have some friends who are going to be down there, so we will look forward to meeting you. And needless to say, if you're ever in Metro Boston and we can do you any kind of kindness or a favor, please let us know, because please let me know. We would be happy to. We've really enjoyed your show so much. It's been, it's just, well, you know, it's, I'm sure people tell you all the time. It's a real day brightener and always appreciated. You're funny, informative, interesting, nice, enthusiastic. Can't beat it. Take care. Thank you. Bye.